Hi, I'm Brad Dacus.
And I'm Kyle Campbell.
Welcome to Faith and Law.
We're breaking down political and legal issues of the day through a biblical lens.
Welcome to this week's episode of Faith and Law. I'm Brad Dacus, president and founder of the Pacific Justice Institute. Today we're going to delve into an issue which blends government accountability with personal freedom and innovative thinking. And what does that spell? Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, also he has SpaceX, and he has a lot of desire to help clean up government. Now, many people listening to this program are sort of saying to themselves, well, wait a minute, this is faith and law. What is faith, what is morals, what does Christianity have to do with, government waste, government fraud, and how government's using its money? Well, we at Pacific Justice Institute, we defend the ability for the church and a biblical worldview to not just be on the sidelines, but to actually influence society, including government, including those who are running government. And we see this as a major, major problem today. In fact, frankly, it has been enlightened to me as more of a problem than ever before. I had no idea how massive waste, fraud, and abuse of our funds has been than has been exposed in just the last few months. To me, we're looking at an egregious breach of public trust, of trust with regards to how our tax dollars are used, etc. Many people say, well, government and spending, that's just a financial issue. No, it's also a moral issue. And how we allow government to use our tax dollars is very, very important. From those with a Christian biblical worldview, it's very important. In fact, I say the love of Christ compels us not to be silent whenever we see evil, wickedness, including waste and fraud, in any form, anywhere. We cannot be silent. God has commanded us not to be silent. Be bold, courageous, speak up, and don't let fear or complacency be our guide. But no, we need to speak up when we see things happening and be supportive of those who are making a real difference. Now, as far as the breadth of waste and fraud, I have to admit, I was stunned when I began to hear of how different allotments of government money is being dispersed and the things they're being dispersed to. Not just things that are inefficient, but things that are immoral. I mean, outright immoral. Funding LGBTQ efforts in not just the United States, but in other countries. Funding acts of evil and social lifestyles that go completely against those who have any kind of a Judeo-Christian moral worldview and perspective. So this is an important issue to us as people of faith in terms of how our money is being used fraudulently, wastefully. But there's another element we need to address as well as people of faith, and that is stealing. Stealing? Is government stealing? Well, they're stealing all right. They're stealing from our children and our grandchildren. Why? Because when they have debt, when they spend more than they take in, they bring on more debt. And who's going to pay that debt? Our children, our grandchildren. How are they going to pay it? Well, there's going to be more and more of the budget that has to go to paying interest and less being used for things like health care, Social Security perhaps, grants and loans to go to college, law enforcement, the defense of our nation. These are all things that are going to take a hit, not so much to us, but even more importantly to our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. So we're effectively stealing from our children when we are complacent about government deficit spending. Last year alone, we were looking at a budget deficit, get this, of $1.4 trillion. That's $1.4 trillion that was stolen from our children and our grandchildren. That's wrong. It's flat out wrong. And we as Christians should not be complacent about it. We need to call it out This is thievery. This is stealing from our children. So that's real important. We understand what it is and why we need to be involved. But what's actually happening? What is going on with this new Department of Government Efficiency that's headed up by Elon Musk? Is it constitutional? Is it efficient? So today I have someone to welcome to the show, Attorney Bob Rust, who is someone who has his hand on the pulse of DOGE, D-O-G-E, Department of Government Efficiency. And he's going to give us some insight as to, is this working? Is it constitutional? So welcome to the show, Bob. And Bob, tell me, what exactly is the DOGE and how could it affect we, the people of the United States?
Well, Brad, thank you, number one, for the invitation. As I think you know, I'm here on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. I've conducted podcasts for a group called USA Citizens Network, which is dedicated to the kind of things that, Brad, your organization is doing. So I appreciate the invitation. Going directly to your question, please understand that as an attorney involved in my own community, and I'm sure it's true where you are, everything's abuzz right now because of what's happening. And it's happening with so quickly that people are having a hard time digesting, including this first question. I think fundamentally, the answer to the question, from at least my perspective, is that Donald Trump was elected to deal with many situations, one of which is the famous saying, drain the swamp, deal with the deep state. And the MAGA movement surprised everyone. Now they've moved, the president and Mr. Musk have moved so quickly with so many moves, some of which they've had to retract because they moved with maybe a bit too quickly without thinking of the ramifications. I would say that from the perspective that I've got, there are two sides to this, one of which is very much pro-Trump, pro-MAGA. All right, made some mistakes, but by gosh, happy to see that it's going after something that's not been done for the longest period of time and very much needed, and that is the cleanup, reduction of this oversized government, the mismanagement, the corruption, all of that. So there's a lot of that, but there's also on the other side of saying, wait a minute, doesn't it take, acting without thinking is not a good thing. But to answer the fundamental question, it is definitely significant to the American citizens what happens here.
So in your opinion, is there a constitutional basis for Elon Musk's actions?
Sure. His status is very much up in the air at the moment. Initially, people thought he had been retained to be in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, and now that it's understood, from the most latest statement from the White House, is that no, he is an advisor to the president. So the very nature of his status is very important to answer the question of the constitutional basis for his actions. If he's advising the president and the actual the newly enterprised DOGE is taking actions based on his advice, that's one thing. And if that's what in fact is happening, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be naturally going to be challenges for the people who have a vested interest, people who earn a lot of money off of the deep state, so to speak, people whose livelihood's been impacted. There's going to be, and there will be a constitutional basis, in my judgment, for as it relates to his actions. It's going to be very important to determine, number one, what is his status? Number two, what is the legal ramifications of him advising another agency of the government, a newly newly constituted agency. But potential challenges, there's going to be a number of them.
Why is so much money, taxpayer money, being wasted, and can government actually be held accountable?
Brad, it's an excellent question, and it's one that I've been around a good while. I remember back in law school, at that time, it was still common law was still the predominant way to settle disputes with the government. It was just at the cusp of the Johnson Great Society and the establishment of the administrative estate. How a citizen can get redress for mismanagement has been a major question that has not been answered in any proper fashion. And if I can be so bold, if in fact the president is acting on behalf of the citizens, if in fact Elon Musk is doing that, they very well may be able to cut through much of what has not been able to be answered by again, during the heart of your question, I'm a citizen, I'm mismanagement, what right of redress do I have? Well, I can sue. You can sue under the government. But there's a series of questions. Do I have standing? Have I in fact been injured? Am I suing as part of a group? The courts have tended to restrict that. Plus the whole question, it costs a lot of money to challenge the government. So the average citizen has been pretty much handcuffed, unless he's part of an interest group that's got money and can do something with it. But yes, Brad, there are legal mechanisms, but the accessibility to them is the question. If we have a government that is now trying to act on behalf of the citizens, hallelujah, we'll see.
Thanks, Brad, and thank you, Bob, for that legal wisdom. Now we get to do something fun, which is dig in a little bit to DOGE and what Elon Musk is doing with this agency. So this is important. We've been hearing a lot from DOGE and a lot about what they're doing. They are working at rapid pace. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss a whole lot that happens every day. But this is really important, and a lot is going on that affects the law, of course, and affects men and women of faith. So let's dig in a little bit to what's going on. So Donald Trump, in his executive authority powers, has designated DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency, and put Elon Musk at the head of it. Now, he is fully within his legal and executive authority rights to do that. So, of course, we've heard in some of the news, some people who are opposed to Donald Trump call Elon Musk President Musk, or criticize how close he is to President Trump, or say that maybe he does not have the authority to be doing some of these things. So let's talk about it. All right, what is DOGE up to? First things first, the purpose of DOGE is to look into government agencies and try to root out fraud and waste and corruption. Donald Trump, during the campaign in 24, when he was running for president, told America he was going to do this exact thing. So it's not really a surprise to anyone. He had Elon Musk up there on the campaign trail stages, jumping around and saying that he was looking forward to doing this exact thing. I believe there was an X account for DOGE well before Donald Trump was even elected as the 47th president. So here we are, and a strong majority of Americans have voted Trump into the White House and also given him the trifecta. He has the entire Congress, the White House, and the Supreme Court. And so now, going forward, he's fulfilling what he has promised to do, and Elon Musk is a big part of that. The difficulty is no one's really exactly sure how to navigate this. A lot is happening very quickly, and there are some legal questions to the work that's happening. So what we have seen in Donald Trump's first about 4 to 6 weeks is that Elon Musk has gotten into these agencies and started taking boxes, dumping them out, looking through files, investigating, seeing what's there, maybe checking the books, cracking them for sure, and firing a whole lot of people. Now, again, the opposition, the Democrat Party and those on the left who don't like this for the reasons that they have for it, maybe they don't want someone cracking the books and taking a look at all of this. they have filed TROs or ex partes to obtain temporary restraining orders against this work. So this is a classic tactic, right? A lot of this happened during Trump's first term when there were efforts just to slow him down. So we're seeing these TROs get filed, and what happens when you file a TRO is the other side doesn't get to respond. It goes before a judge, they make a decision. Sometimes you get an activist judge, and as we know all too well, some judges in this country don't enjoy President Trump and what he's about. So they've been getting some of these temporary restraining orders against some of the work. That does not seem to have slowed down Elon Musk very much in his efforts. And so some of those restraining orders are being, again, flipped, and the work continues. So let's talk about some of the exposure of this process and what it has brought out. What's been happening in our highest levels of government in a lot of these agencies is that there has not been transparency or any accountability, not just for the American people, but for government in itself. And so what DOGE is uncovering is that a lot of work has been happening without anybody knowing or understanding it. And most of that work has been funded by you, the American taxpayer, at great cost to you personally. So let's take USAID, for example. This is a group, an agency that was established to offer foreign aid, essentially, to help other countries in need after times of war. What has been uncovered, thankfully, is that a lot of money has, most unfortunately, been going to fund things that most Americans would find highly unnecessary. A lot of programs that are DEI focused or to work on developing transgender curricula in obscure other nations. It is not fulfilling the purpose of the agency itself. And so, of course, Elon Musk and DOGE are saying, this is not the purpose. We're freezing all of those assets. And again, here we go into this court system battle, and the opposition is pushing back. Now, what we've just seen is that the Supreme Court has decided that the Trump administration must continue foreign aid through USAID. So we'll see what happens there. But a lot is coming forward. And some people who don't like this are saying, well, I'm worried that Elon Musk is going to get my personal data. And the point there is that the IRS was just found to have exposed personal data of 405,000 Americans. So our government is already struggling here, and this is just rooting it out and course correcting and finding a better way forward. Now, this whole claim of President Musk, I personally find highly entertaining. Obviously, Donald Trump, the actual 47th president of the United States, is right there alongside him. They're hosting press conferences from the Oval Office while Elon Musk is sharing about this work. But it's interesting and a bit ironic that some are attacking this and calling him President Musk after America has just endured 4 years of President Biden, who many people suspect was not the actual president in charge, and many people were helping him get the day-to-day to-dos of the office accomplished, including his wife, Dr. Jill, running the final cabinet meeting of his administration. And again, the TROs may continue, the legal challenges will probably continue. It's a tactic to stall and slow them down, but it doesn't look like so far they are slowing down at all. So we can expect that we're going to see a lot more shakeups of these federal agencies. So what does that mean for us, for Christians and people of faith? Basically, this new administration and leadership is shining the light of day on this corruption. It's a really good thing. It can be uncomfortable. It's like cleaning out an infection, but we have to do it. We've got to get it done so that we can properly heal and not let the infection come back. It reminded me of this verse in Ephesians 5. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light consists in goodness, righteousness, and truth. And isn't that what we want? God is calling us to be light in this world, so we want that exposure. We want the truth of what's been happening, and we want to make sure it gets back on the right track. So what do? We pray. We've got to pray over this leadership, The Bible tells us to pray for our leaders first and make sure they can continue this work to discover the truth. And then we support what's happening here. We want this. We want our government to be operating at the most efficient levels that it can be, and in the most efficient, truthful ways, and ways forward that share with the American public what's actually going on. And then we've got to be watchful. Some of these programs that have been shuttered, that have had the executive branch, either through executive orders or other mandates, have been required to close. DEI offices and positions are a good example. Some of them are simply shuttering and reopening the same activities with the same people under a different name. So we've got to have discernment. All right, and as always, I will direct you to the PJI website, pji.org, for excellent resources, and make sure you are catching every Faith and Law episode as we dig into more of what is going on in our culture and how the law applies.
Kyle, thank you for bringing us into a deeper dive of this very, very important subject. You know, folks, we as Americans need to understand that we have a responsibility to hold our government accountable. We're a nation of the people. What does that mean? That means we have a responsibility not to be silent when we see fraud, waste, abuse. Even worse, when we see taxpayer money being used to fund evil, despicable things that we saw so blatant in this over the last 4 years by different agencies. The U.S. Aid Department is just one example, but we see this kind of abuse happening all the time. We see taxpayer money being used for political purposes, to help certain political groups and radical ideologies. This is wrong. It's a complete breach of trust by the American people. Now, what can we do about it? Well, first off, we need to be supportive of people like Elon Musk. You may not like the Tesla, you may not like certain things, but the principle of what he is engaged in is righteous, in that he is addressing fraud and abuse. Now, if you see something being cut, if you see something that is not fat, but something that is lean muscle to the function and service of the American people in a righteous way, speak up about that as well. Well, here's the good news. Whenever you're doing things like this, you're going to have mistakes. But the good news is that Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, have already proven themselves willing to eat humble pie and say, yeah, we made a mistake. We're going to bring back those funding. We're going to bring back those employees. Sorry about that. So that's proven itself already to some degree. But we still need to be able to give feedback. If you see something cut or eliminated that you think should not be cut or eliminated, speak up about that as well. But we all know one thing. We need to cut spending dramatically. As I mentioned earlier, we as a nation faced a $1.4 trillion, not budget, a $1.4 trillion budget deficit last year, stealing and robbing from our children. And that is wrong. So we have to cut spending. We could increase taxes, but government has been pretty good about raising taxes. And we know economically when government continues to tax and tax, there's an impact on the economy, and it's not good. It usually slows economic growth and slows economic future opportunities for our children. No, I personally believe that we have plenty to cut. And now it's come to the surface in multiple agencies, whether it's the Department of Education, HHS, the Department of Defense, and other agencies across the United States, across the federal government. We see that there is a keen need for major spending cuts. And the good news is that there's a lot of pork, there's a lot of fat, there's a lot of fraud and waste that can be cut in large amounts of money that could actually significantly reduce the deficit, maybe even eliminate the deficit. Well, maybe even reduce the debt of the nation, which is already on the teetering point of catastrophe. Fortunately, I believe that the time is not gone for our nation. I believe that if we take major cuts in spending, eliminating fraud and abuse is the first starting point, and along with some sacrifice as well, I'm sure, we can save this nation. We can save the integrity of our financial system, but we have to make major cuts, starting with fraud and waste, and in the process, have fiscal responsibility. Government needs to be held accountable. We need to have fairness. And that doesn't happen if we're silent. That happens when we speak up and support those who are doing righteous things like addressing these issues of fraud and waste. It's something that we cannot be silent about. You know, there are countries out there where people are silent. And you know what happens in those countries? Where they allow fraud and waste to happen massively, bribes and political money, government taxpayer money being given to political groups and stuff like that. You know what happens in those countries? They become poor. Just look south of the border. They're poor. A World Bank organization did a study on why nations are poor. You know what they found? They found two reasons nations are poor. One is because the people do not have individual moral integrity to do what's right simply because it's right. And number two, the government does not have fair, equal justice and application of a law and an application of resources. Let's not fall into that. Let's speak up. Now, there's a verse I think that's very applicable to this. It's Proverbs 21:3. It says, "To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." It's easy to say, well, you know, I'm going to give this up for Lent, or I'm going to do this. You know what God wants more than anything? He wants us to do what's right, to do what's just. And that often involves speaking up for what's right and just for such a time as this. So folks, we're going to have pushback. We're going to have persecutions. We're going to have challenges when we step up for what's right. But remember, no matter what the challenge, always, always keep the faith.